What's up, YouTube? Sean the Average Angler here, and I came up with something today that kind of spiked my curiosity, and I don't know, I thought maybe might interest some of you guys too. I think I'm gonna kind of refer to this as, I don't know, I hate to use the word advanced, but it's looking a little more in depth to fishing shaky heads. And I just rigged the 4 worms that essentially I used in my tournament last week and in practice, okay? The first one is the Reaction Innovations Flirt Worm. This worm is phenomenal, and it was really good in practice. Robo 6-inch fat. Zoom Magnum swamp crawler. Okay. And then, of course, the Z-Man Fatty Z. So I don't know if you can see, maybe not. These are wet. If it looks wet, it's because they are. I just dropped all those in Shasta's old dog bowl. For those of you who don't know who Shasta is, one of my videos has a picture of her on it, on the thumbnail. It kind of explains a little bit about Shasta, what happened to her and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, she's no longer with us, and it still tears me up. Anyway, so I fished all of these worms at Shasta on the Frenzy nail. Okay, that was in my first shaky head video. It's a stand-up jig head. Works really well. You'll see in the bowl test some things that I'm going to kind of touch on, and that's going to kind of explain why I will fish worms in different situations. 2 of these worms floated really well. 2 of them would stand up, but kind of told me that they need to be moved to continue standing up. They'll eventually want to tip over and fall over. So, with that in mind, the stand-up head, if you are shaking it or slowly moving it, slowly dragging it back to you, it's going to stand up, okay? Because of where the line tie is right here, it's going to want to pull that just like that, just right. And then the tail's going to stand up, and it's going to kind of wave back and forth. The other real cool thing in the water test is you'll see the different actions in, say, and I wish I had a swimming pool to show you, because it would be pretty fascinating, actually. I think David Dudley does some of this stuff, but he uses his stuff. The difference in the Robo and the Flirt, the Robo was very similar to that of the swamp crawler, and then the Fatty Z is in a world of its own, okay? The Fatty Z, that's a 3/16 ounce head. All of these are on a 3/16 ounce. I don't throw a 3/16 ounce very much unless I'm fishing shallow. And I mean shallow, under 10, 12 feet. That Fatty Z stood that head straight up in that bowl. I could just drop it, and the worm stood the head straight up, okay? That's what the Fatty Z does. It's Elastec. So any Elastec bait that you put on is probably going to do that. The one I wasn't quite sure about I knew the robo sink. I figured the zoom probably sink. What I will say is they didn't sink the way I thought they would. What I'll say about the flirt, and this comes in two sizes. This, I believe, is like a 6.95. Yeah, 695. I think the other one's like a 495, something like that. This worm floated really well, and the action on the tail when I took my hand out of the water, and you'll see the robo moving a little bit, but this moved a lot. So why am I talking about this? Where am I going with it? Well, at times when you're fishing a shaky head, okay, at times when I'm fishing a shaky head, I try to dead stick it, not do much with it, okay? In other words, I'm not trying to shake it, I'm not trying to move it very much. You kind of want to let it sit, and hopefully it's doing something on the bottom. Every lake, reservoir, whatever it is going to have some natural current in it. So it's going to cause some movement all by itself. We don't need to do anything. At times we do need to do something. It's wintertime, it's cold. For instance, during practice, I was able to move the worm at a pretty good clip, cover water, and they were real aggressive on it. On tournament day, when it was raining, it was much colder, and it was darker, they wanted it sitting longer, maybe not as much action, if you will. On tournament day, I ended up going to the swamp crawler, and that was the ticket. Unfortunately, it was very late in the day when I was able to get feeling enough back in my hands to thread a worm on to the shaky head. Anyway, take a look at the in the water test, and this is what I'm going to say. If I'm dead sticking, these are the two worms I'm going with, okay? Because one, the ultra buoyancy of the Elastec, one, kept that thing standing straight up and down, and it has a very slow, tantalizing action to it, okay? The flirt worm had an amazing amount of action, just sitting still. I mean, the back of this worm was really waving around a lot, and I was shocked, to be quite honest. I'd never done it before. It probably would have been good information to know at the time. Anyway, the robo and swamp crawler, Magnum swamp crawler by Zoom, were both very similar, and it's kind of not surprising. All of these worms are built differently except these two. These two are pretty similar, okay? The tail section on the robo might be a little thinner, and it's got the flat spot. This also has a not quite the same flat spot, but it kind of comes to a point. But for the most part, most of the worm from the head to the tail is pretty similar in size. That's really the only difference I see between the swamp crawler and the robo. Okay, the robo kind of tapers to the back, then it's got that little bulbous tail, kind of, I guess. Okay, here we have a bowl of water. The first worm will be a robo. And it does not float. As you can see, it just falls over. Part of the problem here, the water's not deep enough to support the length of the worm. Not much flotation there. Let's check the Reaction Innovations flirt worm. Little different result there. That one I wish I had a deeper bucket, but let's do the same thing with the Robo. Okay, so it does want to stand up. A little more subtle. That flirt worm is pretty amazing how much that wants to move around without touching. You see just the wave action in the water, how the two worms are moving differently. All right, let's try a zoom. This is a mag swamp crawler. It kind of wants to sink. You can tell how it's bending over a little more, whereas that flirt worm, the tail wants to be on top of the water. Still not bad. One more. And these are my standard shaky head worms, people that I use. That last one is the Z-Man Fatty Z. Just stands that head up. Okay, so this is good. Now we're going to talk about when and why I will fish these worms. Where it fattens back out and flattens out a little bit. The Robo, nobody will argue its effectiveness. The swamp crawler, and they have several, the regular size is the smaller. These also come like, I don't know, 22 a pack or something. Okay, the smaller ones I think come 20. The Magnums come 15 to a pack. So these are very affordable. The flirt worm also a 15 count. So 15 worms. The Z-Man 6 pack of the 5-inch. Robos quantity 8 in the bold bluegill. As far as durability goes, I'm going to say that the Flirt, Robo, and Zoom are pretty respectably close to one another, with maybe, I don't know, I was gonna say maybe the edge going to Zoom, but the Flirt worm is pretty durable. There's a good amount of plastic down in the hooking area. This part, okay, it's not Elastec, but it's not cheap plastic either. Anyway, they're all pretty decent, right? Most of them are not going to be one fish wonders. So this is an effective way to fish and not spend a ton of money. Really, if all you bought was the zooms, I don't think you'd be disappointed. It's kind of hard at times on a tough bite to beat the effectiveness and how long they last, the Fatty Z. I could fish one Fatty Z and probably catch 30, 40 fish in a day and never have to change it. I think most of you have probably used Elastic. It's extremely tough stuff. Right? Fish don't just bite the tail off. I had that happen on the other worms at times during last week. But, so, tournament day turned out to be one of those days where they wanted the bait more dead sticked. In the water test, these two, the flirt worm and the Fatty Z, had a nice, subtle action, not doing nothing, which really kind of led me to believe that working these baits, holy cow, what would that do, right? And you can kind of see just with me holding this flirt worm here, with the shape of the tail as it gets thinner and then goes back out into that flat thing with a keel on it, how much that thing moves around. Just now, right? My hand's still, but look at how the tail of that thing's moving. That's how it was in the water. Both of these have movement, the Zoom and the Robo. The Zoom probably a little more subtle than the Robo. I think the Robo may be a little bit more buoyant. Those two worms I would use when moving the bait. Okay, shaking it, dragging it, shaking it, dragging it. Probably need to keep them moving or not stop very long to keep them upright. They weren't as buoyant. They wanted to fall over in the water. And why is that important? Well, the whole idea is to have this thing standing up looking like it's feeding on the bottom, right? And the bass comes up and sucks it in because it's too busy eating. It didn't know the bass was there to eat them. Very interesting little test. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I want to thank the people that have subscribed, and the comments have been great. To those of you heading to Shasta for a tournament, good luck, enjoy, have fun. It is going to be fun. If you're going to be there this weekend, I'm sorry. I know what it's like. I was there last weekend. It's going to be cold. It's going to be wet, but the fish are going to bite. So dress warm, take extra gloves, be prepared, and yeah, have a good time. To those of you that aren't fishing there, these techniques work everywhere, and it's fantastic winter technique, right? That Fatty Z is phenomenal during the spawn also. All of them are, but I mean that Fatty Z, it's the Fatty Z is something special. All right, this is Sean, the Average Angler. Thanks for watching. Oh, so for a rod, I have several I like to use, but this is what I'm going to tell you. A 702, a 6102, a 732, something in like a 2-power. Pretty good up to the 3/16 ounce size. If you don't have multiple rods, you could fish it on the 1/4 ounce on that one. I actually threw the 1/4 ounce on a $100 rod, and I have $400 spinning rods. But I wanted something with a little more power, and my higher end rods don't have that. I fished it on a Powell Inferno, which I believe is discontinued. 6103, which is a 610 3-power. There's a lot of companies that sell them. Powell has some other lines now that have it. Dobbins has those. Phoenix has them. I'm sure Lou's has them, but I'm not familiar with Lou's lines of rods. I'm sure Duckett, all the major manufacturers, right down to Bass Pro Shops line of rods, are going to have it. 6103, like I said, it was $100 rod, and it was phenomenal with the 1/4 ounce, the 3/16. I think I would have preferred a little bit lighter rod just so that I didn't move the bait too much before I could feel it. For those younger guys or those that have a great sense of feel, maybe that would be fine for you. For me, I really like to pair my rods to the weights I'm throwing and what I'm trying to feel for. 10-pound braid to 8-pound fluorocarbon with an FG knot's what I throw this on. This time of year, there's times where I will up that on certain bodies of water, but for the most part, 8-pound is pretty strong, especially if you're in open water, not dealing with docks, dock pilings, cross members, that kind of stuff. Rod of your choice, rod of your liking. If you want to know my preference, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll tell you what I would get. I was throwing it with a Daiwa Ballistic 2500 spinning reel. Great reel. It's in the $200 price range, somewhere around there. Can't say you have to have the $200 price range reel. There's some really good stuff down in half of that. I don't like to go much under 100 on rods or reels just because the quality really starts to dissipate quite a bit when you get too far under that. But there is some better and better stuff coming out now. Spinning reels have come a long ways. The stuff we used to have to pay $200 for, you're getting that quality of reel now in the $100 price range. So they've come a long ways. Do what you can afford. Don't spend so much so that you can't go fish. Stay within your budget. There's a lot of good stuff out there. That's why I'm not here to sell you any one brand or the other. When I run into great deals, I'll tell you, hey, here's a great deal on something. If it's in your price range, great. If it's not, that's fine too. All right, just trying to, I enjoy making the videos. It's fun. If I can teach some people some things, that's great. All right. Sean the Average Angler, thanks for watching. Fish on.